Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another webinar. Uh, I appreciate you taking the time. I know that the property managers are super busy, and I hope I can bring a lot of value to your time, right? So for those of you that haven't met me yet, my name is Andrew. I'm responsible for training in Hostaway, right? So I'm a customer success engineer. I work trying to understand best practices on how to use our tool and also how to improve your listings, how to get more traction with the channels. I often get feedback, from the channels on how to perform better. So, and I try to share as much as possible, all this knowledge. So we do that every Thursday, around the same time. This time is the time that works best for the majority of our clients, right? So I apologize if it's not in your time zone, but again, you can always watch it later, right? So appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Hi Miami. Hi Houston. Hi. Uh for dropping, a hi here on in the chat in the Q&A, right? Appreciate it. So I'm from Toronto. I'm based in Toronto. I'm not from Toronto, but I'm based here, right? And so hi from Toronto. Some of the things, that I'm always asked about. So let's take this out of the way. So yes, the office hours are recorded. Uh, so in case you don't have time, you cannot attend, difficult time zone differences, register, you're going to get the link by email, right? So don't have to worry about it. So everybody that attends will receive a recording. If you don't attend, you will receive the recording as long as you register, right? Then we understand that you are willing to receive more communication about the subject that we are talking this day, right? Uh, Another thing, this is a practical session, right? So I encourage you to ask questions, right? So everything we try to stay as little as possible with theory, of course, sometimes we have to share something just before we go back to the dashboard, right? But most of the time, we spend our time on the dashboard on how to get things done, right? Sometimes I have to share some knowledge, that is outside of the dashboard, but preferably, this is a practical session, right? So that you can ask how to get things done, right? And how to accomplish things. You can ask anything, any topic, right? But of course, in respect for the time of everyone that is here, if we still have questions about the topic, I will stick to it, right? So if you have questions, like technical questions that are unrelated to the topic, or maybe need to deep dive, and open your dashboard. I cannot open your dashboard in front of everyone, without compromising confidential information. So I always have here a form that you can request additional assistance, right? So then someone can join you on the call, and go over your account and see what is going on. Sometimes it is a setup that needs some review, and that's fine, right? So then we are here for that, right? But during the webinar, I'll try to stick, as much as possible, to the main topic, right? So today is Airbnb, right? So we are talking about fine-tuning Airbnb for profit, right? So this is our main goal today, right? To go over that, all right? So let's get started. Now, and it's good to remember, right? We are an Airbnb Preferred Plus partner, right? So we have the highest standard of integration, not only with Airbnb, but several different channels. Since we are here to talk about Airbnb, we are Preferred Plus, right? So it doesn't get higher than that as a PMS channel manager. Why is that important? It is important because in order to get that kind of certification, we have to apply all the best practices and implement as much of the API, which is the software that they make available for us to connect and do things. We have to use as many features as possible right? So that's the way that you get there, right? So if you're in that category and there is nothing higher than that, it means that we are doing our homework here, to provide you the best service possible and technology, of course, right? So these are some of the topics that we are going to discuss, not limited to this, but just to give you an idea of the agenda today, right? So we are going to talk about new listing discounts, gap night features, quality dashboard overview, cancellation flexibility, non-refundable discount, reviews, host and guest communication, automations, photos and description, weekly discounts and monthly discounts, right? So everything here related, to get more traction, more performance, better reviews, right? So everything that will improve your revenue and profit at the end of the day, okay? Now, I will start with this one here. So, and actually this one, I will share, this link here. Just give me 1 second here. Let me share this link. I'll share this link here in the chat so that you can see in your account, what I'm seeing here, right? So let me share everyone. All right. I just shared a link, and if you click on this link, you go to your account, right? Of course, considering that you're logged into your account. So please go there and you get to the opportunities page, right? So on the opportunities page, you see offer a 20% new listing promotion, right? I recommend you to use that. Well, why is that important, right? This is important because if you have a new listing or a listing that hasn't received reviews, right, it's very difficult to get traction when you're beginning, right? It could be a beginning of your experience as a property manager, but it could be the beginning of your experience with that listing, right? So maybe you're creating a new listing here. So this is a way that Airbnb created that you can get traction quick quicker, right? So because with that, a guest, imagine you're a guest, right? So you're booking a place and you're not seeing any reviews, right? Wouldn't you find that strange? So you have to think as a guest and look at it, right? So in this case, you see it as a guest, they will see that it is a new listing, right? So it is a good incentive. Also, it will show strike prices, it will show promotional information. So I recommend you to use that, right? That's excellent. If you see, like in 2024, almost half of the reservations, for new listings, they came because of the promotion. So I would pay attention to that because it is strongly boosted by Airbnb. All right. So if you have any questions, I always recommend, my clients to go, to the opportunities tab. Remember, this is just an account, a test account, right? So of course, not using everything, right? But this is just for test. But you should be considering, everything here because of course there are tips for algorithms, to work best. Okay. Now, another thing. Okay, so before I go there, right? When we go, we are talking about gap nights, right? So I have here open. So if you go to your listings, and you come here, and in most select, excuse me, just a second. Oh, good here. Apologize. It was a squirrel, on the ground floor, the squirrel passed by. Just quick thing. Sorry about that. So I was saying about gap nights, right? So if you come here on the custom fields booking settings, right? Let's say you are working, with a minimum nights, on the calendar. Can you open the calendar here? Yeah. So some of my clients might work with like even 7 days as a minimum stay, which is all right, right? So you can use any number of minimum nights, but sometimes, like for example, this is a very good example actually, right? So this is a minimum of 2 nights, right? So it is impossible to make a reservation here. So this night is lost, right? Actually, it's not if you use this feature here, right? So you can select, for example, a minimum of 1 night. Then you can select maximum, and then you activate. I'm on booking settings, right? Inside the listing setup. And then the smallest, allowed gap could be 1 night, right? And it allows a gap between 1 and 60 days out. What does this information mean? It means that if you're getting closer to the date and you're about to lose that night, then you can reduce the minimum nights, right? That helps a lot with revenue, right? Because you can lose a lot of revenue. Because let's say if you're using a minimum of 3 or 4 nights, right? And then you have 2 reservations, and you know that within that gap, you're not going to get something. So you can leave your minimum nights higher, but then when it gets very close, it could be even closer, right? So we could say, no, let's put a very narrow window. And if we are already within that month, we are willing to be flexible, right? So it's offering a flexibility in specific conditions, right? If not, if someone is booking in advance, then you can expect the minimum nights that is on the calendar, right? This would be a way to create an exception. Very valid. And I can guarantee, especially for those of you that are not using like minimum 1 night, of course, you don't have to worry about, right? But sometimes it's not worth it, right? So you need at least a minimum of 3 nights or 4 nights or this kind of thing. But then, you have too many gaps, right? And for the gap, it is better to have a reservation with less nights, that you would ideally have than not having reservations at all, right? So this is a good one. It works very well, and I have very good feedback on this feature here. Okay. So let's talk. I'm already receiving some questions here. I'm just going to advance a little bit, then I come back, to the questions. All right. This is minimum 9. Okay. Now, okay. Very important, right at the beginning, right, of this conversation here today, right? So you have to look at the Superhost status, guest favorite, the same way that I was talking about our classification, our certification with Airbnb, right? So you have to aim for the best, right? And then work backwards, because this is your goal, right? At the end of the day, the hosts that are going to get more reservations are the super hosts or the guest favorite listings, right? So we have to go towards that. I'm not saying that you must be, of course, this will not be available for everyone, but if you go in that direction, I can guarantee you that you're trending well, right? And if you think of all the tools, all the features that we offer, they are also provided in that direction, right? So I'm starting with that so that we can see everything on communication, on automation of communication, on reviews. They're designed for that, right? They don't happen to be there just because a developer decided to create them, right? So it was designed to improve, that performance, right? So that you can accomplish that, right? So that's something that I recommend you to always think about it, and look for it, right? So we are talking about a Superhost, hosting experience, right? So I'm not going to tell you the rules. You already know, right? But it's important to look at the tool, at the dashboard with that in mind, right? So exceptional responsiveness, right? So here we are talking about volume of reservations, right? So here, when we talk about responsiveness, right, we have to translate that to communication. We're talking about the inbox, right? We are talking about message automation, right? Low cancellation rate, right? Many times, you feel like, hey, I don't know if I want to receive this gas. Yeah, but it will affect your performance, right? So canceling a reservation, you must keep that as low as possible because you're creating a bad experience to the guest, right? That's that's the reasoning behind it, right? So then high overall rating, yeah, we have several tools. I'm going to show some of them. Of course, most of you have already completed, the onboarding and the experienced one and seasoned ones, right? So you don't have to worry too much about it, but sometimes, so some of the review tools, they can be not specifically on the review section, but it could be on quality, it could be on communication, it could be a combination of many different things, right? The way that you use the tool, to accomplish that, right? It's not a single feature. It is the operation and the use of multiple features. And then when we go to listings, same thing, right? Ratings again, right? So that's why we insist on ratings, because it reviews, it is one of the best marketing tools that you can have. It's a good review. Right? So outstanding guest experiences, again, reliability is key. Cancellation, again, plays a very important role here, right? So don't take it lightly. Now, act on reviews, right? So that's why, we always come back to reviews and make sure, that you're using everything that we have, on reviews, and we have a lot, right? Review your guests, monitor your reviews, respond, learn from your reviews. That's a very important one, right? Sometimes I get a feedback, from some clients saying that, hey, I got a bad review, should I create a new listing? No, that's not how it works, right? So you should think about improving the experience, right? You should think about communicating with the guests, trying to understand, trying to improve, trying to make sure that the next time you don't get that. You can talk to the guests that have gave you a bad review, or you can talk to Airbnb if you believe it is unfair or untrue, the review that was given, of course, provide proof. And of course, you have also to give a positive feedback, right? So if the guest is leaving a good review, you have to review back, you have to communicate back with the guest, right? And be mindful of that. Just to illustrate what I'm talking about here on reviews, when we are talking about reviews, we have the review section, right? Where you can manage the reviews, right? So you can see which channel, we can select the time frame, we can answer, a review. You can reply from here. From here, you can hide the review, not to appear on the booking engine, on the website. Many things can be done from here, right? On auto review, you can review the guest, right? So you can leave a review here, for example. You can leave an inventory of reviews to automatically review the guest. So this way you never forget to review the guest, right? Here you create the rule, you say after 2 days, the guest will be reviewed. You select the listing, you can select all the listings and have an inventory, and the system will randomly pick, a different review to review your guest. Why is that important? The more guests you review, the higher the chance of receiving a review you get, right? Yeah, but then people tell me, but yeah, sometimes I get a bad review. Yeah, okay. In that case, if the guest had a bad experience, the review will get scheduled here, but then you can cancel the review. So you don't review the guest, don't remind the guest to review you, right? Maybe they have a bad experience, not a bad review, but a bad experience, right? And also still on the review side of things, right? So we still have review templates, auto review, and we have hosting quality, right? So you can see more specifically, what is happening, not only to reviews, right? But what are the issues that are coming up, like, on complaints, for example, right? And that's a good indication if you're trending in the right direction or not. So we have this tool, recommended to go over that. We have review quality, to evaluate that. So go to your listing, test that, check this section here on hosting quality and have that check, right? Now, another thing still on reviews that is super important is when you are in communication, right? So we have automations here. Then when you're creating a new automation, remember, we have triggers that are related to reviews, right? So if the guest submitted a review, for example, and an additional condition could be that guest review has been written, so then that will be a good one on the example that I want to show you. It's review rating. This is the one that I want to show, right? So if it is not a perfect score, you can have an automation here to reach out to the guest, right? In case you don't have time, you don't miss that. I recommend that you contact the guest, every time, especially if they didn't have a good review. They didn't leave a good review so that you can understand and you can de-escalate the situation, right? Maybe they can review their review, right? Do the review, that's but okay, and then we have, it is a perfect score, right? And then you can thank the guest, and invite the guest, to come back another time, and then you can select that, right? So we have some tools that can automate the process, on managing reviews and trying to get the best out of it, right? So if you get a feedback, negative feedback, you should automatically, think about creating a task to make adjustments, if any adjustment is possible to be done. Okay. Now, see responsiveness. Yeah, message automations, right? Try to reply to guest, use message AI, right? So we have AI in place, use templates, use triggers, use everything that you can. So it doesn't go, for example, another trigger that I see that is very common in message received, right? So maybe, Monday is the day that you have to go shopping, right? Maybe you have to go to the market, to buy things, to supplies and everything. And you cannot be messaging back and forth. You can leave an automated review just to say, hey, today I'm out, may take a little longer, to reply, but I'm going to get back to you, right? And we have a couple. So this kind of thing, it doesn't delay the response time, right? So it may not get the answer, that the guest is expecting, but it will show that you're not unresponsive, right? Because that's the last thing that you want to happen, right? And same thing here, right? With AI, auto reply rules, you can create rules, you can modify them, right? So there are many things that can be done here, right? But we are here to talk about Airbnb. not going to deep dive on any of these features. I'm just going over some of the things, and especially the things that I know have a huge impact on Airbnb, right? And then I go to the questions, right? And then we can go a little deeper, on any of those, right? Booking flexibility, right? So that's another one. A non-refundable discount. That's huge, right? That is huge. That is here. We can go back to the listings. Listing here, and then we go to additional. It's here, right? So again, I'm back to the listings on additional information and policies. And then on cancellation policy, right, for Airbnb. So it is important. First of all, you can have different cancellation policies if it is a long-term, or short stay. That's one thing. Another one, and this is the one that I want to bring to your attention. You can offer a discount, a non-refundable discount, right? So let's say the guest wants a discount, right? But this is an automated way of doing this, right? So you can create a discount for 10 or 15%, that's the range, that people usually do. And I recommend to be, no higher than that, because you want to attract people to book a non-refundable, right? Then you get a discount. In compensation, right? They cannot cancel, right? If they try to cancel, then you get the full amount. So this is a trade-off that you can offer. And that's a way that you can be more flexible on your standard cancellation, right? So that's the relevance of this one. Maybe it's not even because you want to sell non-refundable, but because you can feel more confident, to be flexible. And guests that are price concerned, they will go for the non-refundable, right? So if they're very, very interested on a discount, they usually come for non-refundable, right? So then that's a trade-off that you can have, right? And finally, before I go, to the Q&A, we have photos, right? Photos, different angles, amenities, right? Take at least 35 photos for Vrbo, for Airbnb, at least 30 photos, right? So there is a pattern, right? So not only the quality of your photo, but the amount of photos will make a difference, right? With the channels, right? And it's a trend that I can see, among all the channels, right? So is of course the quality of the photo will have an impact, yes, but the amount of photos also have an impact. Why is that? The quality, because it gives the look and feel, right, of the place, how it looks, how I feel, and then you sell that that feeling on how it's like to be in that place, right? So, of course, at the end of the day, this is what we're doing, right? So we're trying to convince the guest, that this is the place to bring your family, to spend your vacation, to have a great time. The number of photos is important because you can take photos of everything that are related to the place, right? So what do I mean by that? It's like when you go to the amenities section here, very often I see amenities that are checked here and the photos are not there, and vice versa. Make sure that you audit your listings, your photos, your amenities at least once a month, right? Why is that important? Because some of your guests might be looking only at the photos. Some of your guests might be looking at the description. Some of them might be filtering by amenities, right? So different ways to book, from the guest perspective that you might not be taken into consideration, right? So then when we go here and attractions, right? So if you have all these attractions, you can take photos, of the attractions that are nearby and add to your listing, right? Okay. Assume it is a small listing, right? But it's you can take photos of all the rooms. One photo per room, not necessarily, right? Actually, I recommend you to take different angles, because sometimes they want to understand it. Where's the bathroom, for example, right? In relation to the room, is that close? Do I have to carry things? What is the floor plan, right? So they're trying to imagine, how will be the dynamic, especially if it is a big group of people, right? If it is a smaller, they want to see. You will be surprised, some of you, but some people only go to places where they see a photo of the bathroom, right? Because they want to know if the bathroom is clean, because they're leaving their home and they want to make sure that. So it could look like a detail, but it's not, right? Because you may misguess based on number of photos. Number of photos also, it is something that the algorithm will take into consideration, right? So don't take it lightly. So, and since we are here, I just pass here. Of course, that if you don't accept instant bookable, right? So, yeah, your chances of getting a reservation will decrease, right? That's I believe everybody knows that by now, but it's not too much, to keep repeating that, right? Maybe you must, right? It is the case that you must. All right, in that case, you don't accept, but the best way to get traction, to get more reservation, because some people don't want to inquire and then wait for your answer so they can book, right? Some people just want to go and book. They looked at the place. Today is the day that I will decide the place that I'm going to stay, and I want to book now, right? So your place is not available, for this kind of impulse, right? To buy, you're missing that client, right? So this is something, that you should be very mindful. On channel specific, if you go to that section, there are many things that are specific for Airbnb that they provide on the API. So that we can implement here from Hostaway, right? So preparation time, you can use, okay, if you allow instant booking, let me go back to this listing. If you allow, you can select if it is for everyone, just for experienced guests. There are different ways here that you can set this up, right? So you can apply discounts, you can apply listing description. So everything here. Again, remember, right? This is a test listing, so I haven't used AI, haven't used everything. Or sometimes I use someone else remove, just to test different things, right? This is also super, super important, right? Expectations, right? So, for example, requires stairs, potential noise. Why is this important here? It is important. So, let me use the size of my slide. Oh, why is this important? Because you can get a bad review just because there were stairs and then someone was not expecting, or they had some mobility issues, right? And they realized only when they got there, that the place is not very good for them, right? So why do I recommend you to put here? Let's say, for example, you get a bad review because the guest didn't like the fact that you had steps, in your property, or it was too noisy. If you add here, I already got some questions here, and I'm going to address that right now, right? So many property managers, they come to me, yeah, but Andrew, I went to Airbnb, and they sided with the guest, right? They would not take the review down, even though it's not my fault that the place is noisy. It was on the description. If you put here, you give more emphasis, to this information, And if you have to request the review removal, it's a lot easier, right? You can go to Airbnb and you can say, hey, I highlighted that information, right? So it's not my fault, right? So the guest didn't read, you know, it was on the communication, it was everything, they missed. It is not fair to receive this review. And I can guarantee that you can get that, removed, right? So there are many here that could be an issue, from the guest perspective. And if you highlight here, that will minimize, any potential issues, right? Same thing with checkout tasks, right? So many guests complain about the tasks, they're happening after. So in that case, you can also put here, which tasks, are we talking about, right? So if it is expected from the guest to be done, please add here and save, right? Confirm and save, and it will push to Airbnb right away, right? It will update right away. Okay. All right. And I'm gonna go over the questions now. Right. I got a question here from Nana. First of all, thank you everyone that posted the question here. So how does the gap night work with price labs or for night customization? Yeah, I recommend you to use either one or another, right? Because if you're using on price labs and then you use here, it might be a conflict, of information, right? So uh, I'm not sure if here would override there, but it's like seasonal rules, right? If you're using seasonal rules, and together with any dynamic pricing, that can be confusing, right? It could be unexpected, not confusing, but the outcome could be unexpected, right? By seasonal rules, I'm talking about, for example, if you add discounts here, right? And then you create rules on the dynamic pricing that are different, So choose one, right? Pick one and go with that, right? So if you're using one to manage, specific conditions, stick with that. All right. Yeah. So is asking me, and another question about the gap nights. Yes, you can have, like, for example, a minimum of 4 nights here, right? So you can have any minimum, that you want, and then fill up the one night with gap nights. Yeah, that's right. It is the exception, right? Well, what is, I believe, the most important part here is booking settings is the condition, right? In which condition are you doing that, right? Usually a closer booking window, because if you have the chance, of course, if you're putting minimum of 4 nights, right? It's because you expect a minimum of 4 nights, right? So if someone is booking 2 months in advance or 3 months in advance, you would prefer that. So I would put something, between 60 and 30 days. So here's where you control the booking window. Because when you're getting closer, you can lose that sale, right? And this is what we are trying to avoid with that type of tool. All right. Thanks for the question. Okay, Alicia is asking here, what if Airbnb does not remove the review after you prove it's unfair? Okay, so that's it. It's difficult to say, without seeing it, but at the end of the day, they make a judgment, based on what was presented and what they consider it was fair or unfair, right? Rule of thumb, statistically at least, they're more right than wrong from what I've seen, but it could be, some exception. So my recommendation is to take the preventive measures, right? Like I said, highlight things, that could be complained about it. Communication, try to have a very clear communication, and show evidences, because it is difficult, but sometimes it happens, right? It might happen. It's not bulletproof, but it is the best, that we have today is that kind of evaluation, right? Arbitration that they have. It's usually fair, right? So, well, I'm sorry, in your case, you had a bad experience. Okay, I got questions here about how to hide the review, right? So, of course, we have. So I'm on the reviews page, right? So I'm on manage reviews, and then we can hide the review on the booking engine from here, right? So the review that you got, from any channel that would be displayed on the booking engine, you can have it removed. Okay. Jacob is asking if you select the minimum gap night of one night, will it allow people to book one night only or a one night gap that is between two reservations? Yes, that's exactly it. Oh, is that a way to allow one night only if the gap is only for one night? No, that's not possible. I got it. I understood your question. Thank you. But no, that's not possible. You can select the booking window, right? So within this time frame, what is the minimum that you're willing to accept? But it's not a condition to the number of nights. Yeah, got a question here about listings. Listings, we go to amenities, and then we have one section here. for kitchen, dining table, kitchen island, microwave, kitchen utensils. Okay, so Nana is asking me, about kitchen on a specific condition that have a part hotel with shared full kitchen and mini kitchenette in each unit, right? So there are many, yeah. When you say mini kitchenette, I don't know what exactly are you offering, there, but I would select each one of the items that you have on the mini kitchenette, right? And I would describe that you have a kitchen, uh, on the description, right? That you have a centralized kitchen. It would be more of a description, right? But if it is specifically for the listing, I would select only the amenities on the kitchenette that you have, right? Because from what I understood of your question, you have a full kitchen in a centralized place, a common area, something like that. And you have a kitchenette on each one of the units, right? So by kitchenette, do you mean like dishwasher? Do you mean a microwave? So I would select all the items of the kitchenette that you're mentioning, right? And I would explain that full kitchen is on the description. Otherwise, it will give the impression that each one of the places have full kitchen. I don't know what is the difference exactly, what is missing one or what you have in the other one. But as you can see, there are many things, right, that can be individually selected. The bread maker, coffee, tea, right? So maybe this, could be, and you can even be more specific, in some cases, on what are the items, right? Maybe a freezer would be in the kitchen. Don't know exactly, right? But I suggest you review that. Select only the ones that apply to that listing. Thank you for the question. Yeah, listing expectation. I believe I have already answered that one. It's here, right? So you go to channel specific, and then on channel specific here on this column here on Airbnb, you scroll down. Here is Airbnb listing expectation. Okay, Elena. Okay, so got a question here about Airbnb commission, right? Airbnb has recently, informed some property managers, right? Why some? Depending on the country, so I'm talking, there are people from many different countries here, on this webinar, but especially in United States, most of the property managers want a split fee model, right? On the split fee model, the guest pays part of the reservation of the commission for Airbnb, and the host pays another part of that commission, right? But for many of you, that's no longer the case. For a long time, it's a host only fee, right? So in case you need to make that adjustment, just show here. I put it together. I got these questions a couple of times here, and this time is Sophia. Thanks, Sophia, for this question, right? So long story short, if you are on a split fee, only if you are on a split fee, let's make sure of that, right? So if you're on host only fee, nothing changes for you, right? But if you're still on a split fee where the guest is paying, it could be more or less 14%, depending on the place, right? It's not always that. Majority, especially United States, like the guest fee is around 14%, and the host fee is around 3%, right? So in that case, what is going to change, right? So the cost of that, right? Because then the cost is entirely to the host, right? How can you make the adjustment? Because this time here, the guest is not paying any fee, right? So because of that, all the cost comes to the host, right? Does it change anything? Yes, if you have, for example, to pay out the property owner based on that amount and the final price, you can make an adjustment, right? So let's say you had the base rate at 1,000. I just made a simulation here, 1,000, $140, it would be paid by the guest, right? And the host would pay the $30, right? So then in this case, if it is $1,000, with the new one, you can add a markup, right? So your pricing is similar, right? Even though your cost increases, then you can put a markup. Let me show you what I'm talking about, right? So for those, I know that for some of you that may not even ring a bell, but this is where you can add the markup, right? So the markup will be on the top of the base rate, right? So base rate is what you have on your calendar, right? So it's on the example, it's like if I have $1,000 here, right, on per night, right? So then if I come here to the listing, right, on price and fees, and I add a 15%, so it would be like this example here, right? So then the total price will go, instead of showing as 1,000, it will show as a 1,150. For the guest, if you add this markup, it will still look like the same price, because the guest, remember, the guest was paying that already, right? Because they had to pay that. It's not that they didn't have to pay. It's just that it didn't go into your cost, right? That's basically the difference, right? Not on the final price. So you can increase your price, your markup on that here. You can add the 15%. So then you get, to the same pricing, final pricing. And then at the end of the day, with the discounted host fee, even though it's higher, your income, it is still similar, right? And you can run simulations and find out, okay, which one is the one, because you don't want to impact the final price anyway, right? So you want to add just to compensate your cost, right? So it's a cost transition. And there are different scenarios, right? If you're only using Airbnb, right, you're still not using any other channel, don't even add the markup, just go to the calendar, right? Remember, if you're using any sort of dynamic pricing will update the calendar, and then the markup is applied on the top of it, and that is sent to the channel, right? So if you're having about the same markup, across the board, or maybe because you're only using Airbnb, just go ahead and update your calendar, right? Your calendar rate. You don't have to do that, right? So it depends on the channels that you're using and the strategy that you're using. Just be careful, not to be overpriced, right? So then if you're going to add a markup, make sure that you go to your Airbnb account, right? And modify before it becomes mandatory, right? It will be a time that it will become mandatory. It will be, for everyone, right? So let's say for you, it is still optional, but they will transition that. If you add a markup, make sure that you go to Airbnb and change your model to host-only fee, because that way you don't get like on this simulation here, this one is a 0% to the guest. But if you don't modify that on Airbnb, your Airbnb account, then you will become more expensive, because then they will continue to apply that, of course, and this will change. So, okay, let me go back. So only modify if you're working on a host-only fee, right? If you're not working yet, you stay here. So if you want, and I recommend you do that, right? So make the transition, make all the adjustments now, rather than waiting until Airbnb say, hey, now you are host only fee, right? So take the precautions. If you want to compensate the difference, come here, add the markup and make sure that you transition to host only fee. But don't add the markup and leave the split fee because then you're going to be very expensive, right? So I know everybody wants to increase the ADR, but at the end of the day, you're competing, against other property managers, right? So you don't want to be overpriced and that get your occupancy rates lower, right? So that's you must be mindful about that. But yeah, okay. If you have any questions, be glad to address them. Yeah, Mark is asking me the same thing, about guest service fee. One more thing that is important to remember, right? So if you go to financial here, if you check your formulas, right? This is the host channel fee, right? So the host channel fee is how much you as a host are paying to Airbnb, right? So what is going to change is the guest service fee, right? So that's that's the thing that is changing, right? So it will be updated the same way, so you don't even have to change the formula, right? It's just modifying the pricing model, so that you can absorb the cost, right? But the value will change and it will come, exactly as Airbnb charged, right? So there is no need to modify any formulas here, right? But there is a need to understand how much it impacts your cost and how much on your pricing you have to compensate, to get the same effect, right? At the end of the day, to get the same payout, right? So host guests, it translates to payout, right? So the final payout doesn't change much. You may need some adjustments here, right? I'm getting some questions here off topic that I will not be able to address. So what I'm going to do here, and I don't have enough time, to address that. And some of them will need, it would need someone to look at your dashboard, right? So let me see if there is any other question that I can help from here. Right? So please, Tony is asking about safely. It's asking, yeah, I believe it is our insurance that we shared recently. Just please provide your email, your account ID that you can find here on settings, right? Here. And with this information, any form, it could be anything, right? Just add here, I will get a CSM to talk to you. Okay. Gabriel is asking about the face group for Hostway hosts. Not that I know, but sounds like a good idea. Thank you. I'll take your feedback. Okay, David is asking if you can remove reviews from Airbnb, from managed reviews. No, that's not something that Airbnb allows us to do, right? So no, what they allows us to do when we say manage reviews, you can reply, you can review the guest, so that part is integrated, right? But it's not like Airbnb offers, hey, do you want to remove from Airbnb? We can remove the visualization from the booking engine because we have control over that, right? But that's not something that Airbnb allows, not only us, they don't allow anyone, any software to do that. That's not available, on their software. Unless it is done internally by their team. Mark is asking, can we put in the description details to note? that the gas fee is included base rate. Well, it will be, it's simpler than that, right? So it will be the D-Day is the day that either you transition that, on your own. Let's say today, right? You leave the webinar, you go modify your listings, go to your Airbnb account and say, I'm host only fee now, right? So you want to be proactively, modifying things, right? And you have to do both, huh? If you're going to do the markup, also go there and select that. After this day, every reservation that comes forward, will come in that condition, right? So you wouldn't need the note. You just need to you can filter by the creation date, right? So you go from the date that the reservation was created. If it was created after today, it will be following that rule, right? By the way, I already got this question as well. So in case, I'm sorry if that's not the case for everyone, but for some of you, that's very important, right? So on the split fee, transitioning to host-only fee. No, it doesn't go backwards, right? So it's not retroactive being applied, right? So it's only being applied for reservations created after the transition, right? So it doesn't modify the past. Everything that was created was according to an agreement, right, that you had with Airbnb. Now, it's just after the changes. Okay, very good question, Jacob. Does it affect, the change of pricing? Does it affect the algorithm? No, it doesn't, because the final price is what Airbnb is taking into consideration, to display the prices to the guest, right? So even if you had the fees before and everything, they were always considering the final price. It's been a while that, right? So what we are changing, what it's really changing is who has the cost of it, right? The final price is the same. So, and that's the way that they rank, right? So they will rank in the same way. The only difference is that it's not the guest paying anymore, right? At the end of the day, it's always the guest that is paying. Let's make that clear, right? It's always the guest that pays. It's always the final one, that will pay. So I'm just bringing this up from operational perspective. The cost is it's going to be displayed in a different way. So if you have formulas that count with that, the way that you pay out the property owner, so it is important to have that in mind, right? But the final price should be the same, right? As you can see here, very similar. And this is just a simulation. You can have, a smaller markup, a higher markup needed, right? Just don't go crazy, right? So we want to get reservations. Okay, where can we go on model host only? I'm going to share the link. I have the link for that. I'll share the link. How can you get the page? To modify your fee structure with Airbnb. Okay, good question. No, you don't change, the split fee to host only fee on Hostaway, right? That has to be done on Airbnb, right? So there is no way to do that. That's not part of the software integration, right? So you have to go to your account because that's part of your relation with Airbnb. What you can do here, that's why I'm separating things, is on the listing level, increase the markup so that you can make that compensation for the cost that you're absorbing, right? So going to the listings, right? So just the markup, you can do from Hostaway side, right? So it is if you want to do, right? So this is optional, right? The split fee transitioning to host only fee, that's not optional, right? But just make sure that you do both same time. And you should have received communication, from Airbnb indicating where to go. But I'm going to share, the link. together, with the recording of the call. Yeah, thanks, Pascal. And by the way, yeah, for those of you that just joined Airbnb, then, it is the new rule anyway, right? So October 27th is for anyone that is already using the split fee, and it will transition, right? So if you're a new client, if you just started, like last week, you're already on the host-only fee. And many other different countries, right? So for example, in Brazil, 16%, right? So, in many other countries, the split fee was not available for a long time, right? So this is something that Airbnb has been coming, for quite some time now, right? So it's not something new, that anybody should be surprised, right? So they've been transitioning gradually, to that. Actually, I'm going to share here. Thank you, Pascal. Pascal is one of my most frequent, uh, attendees here in our office hours, right? So I'm sharing here the link in the chat. Please check. It's the link to this page here, on Airbnb, where you can find additional information, right? So some of you are very aware of that, some of you have read it, know it by heart. Some people don't even know what I'm talking about, right? So in case you don't know about it, right, they just change it. This is how the split fee works. And they also give a specific direction depending on the country that you're at, right? So that you don't get confused, like, hey, what are you talking about, right? So maybe that's completely unrelated to you. Well, we have passed our time. Well, I appreciated all the questions, all the participation, all the sharing. It makes that way more interesting, right? So please, again, sharing here. If you need any assistance, please fill out this form, and I'm going to get someone, to assist with that. All right. Well, appreciate your time, and thank you very much, and I see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.